In terms of that reality, I think one has to maintain what I'm calling realistic optimism. Leadership, at the end of the day, is what I call background music. Let me give you a historical example. This is one of the most famous photographs, perhaps, to come out of the Second World War. This is Dwight Eisenhower, 5th of June, 1944, somewhere in the south of France. He's talking to this group of paratroopers from the 101st Airborne Division. These young men are going to parachute into France in the early morning hours of the 6th of June, 1944. Sadly, a significant number of the young men in that photograph will be dead or wounded within 24 hours of this photograph being taken. I had a chance to talk to that particular guy in the center, number 23. His name was Wally Strobel. He sadly has passed away. At the time, Wally Strobel was 22 years of age. And I asked Wally, now to tell you the rest of the story, what was going on there. And certainly Eisenhower spent the day on the 5th of June traveling around, talking to paratroopers, talking to sailors, talking about guys who were getting into landing ships, talking about aircraft crews. And the first question, of course, when I talked to Wally, as I said, was he telling you, how to do squad tactics, how to read a map, how to jump out of an airplane? Obviously not. We're far beyond all that. His mere presence that day on all those locations was to suggest to everybody he could talk to that this is going to work. This very complex operation is going to succeed. You see there what he said to his staff in March of 1944. We are going to focus on success. We're not going to focus on this being failed. But I went on, so tell me, Wally, what actually happened? And Wally kind of smiled, and he said, well, first of all, you need to know that we were all in Quonset huts, checking our weapons, checking our parachutes. Some guys were reading, some guys were sleeping, some guys were gambling, some guys were writing a letter home. The normal type of things you might assume a young man might be doing at that particular moment. And a guy runs into the Quonset hut and says, hey, General Eisenhower's outside. Now, truth be told, soldiers could care less about talking to generals. So we basically told that guy where he could go, take General Eisenhower, and they could collectively spend their eternity together. At which point, the guy who had run into the Quonset hut announces, well, you guys don't understand. He's got a dynamite-looking driver. So these guys have really come out to see Eisenhower's driver. Her name was Kay Summersby, and she was a female British soldier. They came out to see Kay. They could care less about Eisenhower. But be that as it may, I would still suggest that Eisenhower is there to provide that realistic optimism. I then went on and asked Wally, I said, well, what's Eisenhower saying? Is this one of those win one for the Gipper kind of speeches that you think he might be delivering? He said, well, no, in reality, all Eisenhower had said to me was, son, where are you from? And I said, sir, I'm from Michigan. And he's saying, there's great fishing in Michigan. But still, I would argue that his mere presence was that desire to be background music, to be optimism. And Strobel told me as the aircraft he was on was taken off, and he could look out of a small window on the side of the plane, the last person he saw before the aircraft took off was Dwight Eisenhower watching the planes take off, standing on the runway. But Eisenhower maintained that sort of realistic optimism, which all leaders have got to have. Optimistic to an extent publicly, while at the same time being realistic, like Jim Stockdale. And Eisenhower carried in his pocket a memo that he wrote on the 5th of June, 1944. In that memo, back to accountability, he said, the landings on the beaches at Normandy have failed. Everything that I could ask of the soldiers, sailors, and airmen who conducted this operation was done. Any blame for its failure is mine and mine alone. And he wrote that and kept it in his wallet, and his enlisted aide found that about 4 or 5 months later. As I understand it, you can find that particular document in the National Archives. He was presenting realistic optimism while being willing to be accountable.